Hey.
Hello.
Hi, Rory.
I'm getting an external camera this weekend so that I have a face again.
Well, you do have a face. We just don't get to see it. That's
I
all.
know,
You know, that's
but I
that's
hate that.
exciting. That's very exciting.
I know. I hate being on these things without a face. So I
It's
just,
almost
yeah.
like reaching out and touching. I'm the only one who's showing their face right now. So,
But I always appreciate that you're like, turn your cameras on, because I feel the same way. And then now I'm a huge hypocrite and
well, it's my
my
only
camera's
chance.
been
I mean, I'm not really camera ready, but I'm here. It's my
right.
last meeting of the day. It's Friday.
Are
Yeah.
you in Oakland or are you in Bend right now?
No, we're in Bend. We're going to be
Oh,
here
nice.
for a while. Unfortunately, I can talk to you later offline, but Boomer's got a sarcoma in his leg.
No.
Yeah. He's
I'm
9.5
sorry, Sharon.
and he's a Bernie's. So,
Yeah, he's lived a long life for a big guy like that.
yeah, it's inoperable. So we're just kind of dealing with that. We just kind of got everything today, this week. So it's been like, oh, okay, we can handle that. Oh my gosh, what does that mean?
I'm sorry.
Thank you.
I love that guy.
I know.
I'll never forget him and Rue.
They were such a Mutt and Jeff. They were such a great pair, the two of
Oh
them.
my gosh. I need to find that picture of them.
Mm-hmm.
I can't remember what gathering that was, but
Oh yeah, the two of them are so. I mean, she was the bossy one. I mean, he's bossy, but she was really bossy.
no, I know. She loved him though. She'd like follow him
She
around.
totally did. Well, I think they were two kindred spirits of like, oh yeah, bossy meets bossy. She was just older
Totally.
than him, and and for everybody on the call who's listening, is like, who are you talking about? Well, Rue was this tiny little teacup type poodle, and I have a giant Bernese Mountain Dog, and they were like besties
They are
at
so,
the
and
office.
Rue is blind and
Yes, to add to
he would
that.
like go find Boomer and just like sit next to him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I loved Rue. Rue is I still do. I think of her often.
Me too. I have a little altar set up for her. She was like my grandma.
She was. She's like my grandmother. She was very sassy.
Very sassy. It's so good to see you all. I'm sorry. My sincerest apologies that I still do not have a camera on, but soon. We'll give people a couple more minutes to join. I think there was a little bit of confusion with links today. Was everyone able to find this pretty easily and the link worked and all the things? Okay, cool.
Yeah. I just had too many links is all. I didn't know which one was which.
I know, that's what I was worried about. I think there were 2 links for this particular summit. Not sure how that happened, but
it's just that special.
I know.
That's how I
Hey,
look at it.
this is Kristen. I'm here and I'm just I'm in transit. So I'm going to just listen for the first few minutes until I can get to a still place.
Excellent. We're going to give people a couple minutes to join. People are still hopping on.
Cool.
So take your time. All right. We'll give people till like 3 after. How's everyone doing?
Friday.
Yes, it is Friday. Although I just got this like wind of energy right before this meeting.
Oh, go with it.
I am, I know. I'm like, all right.
You want to share that, Rory?
I'll try.
Jealous.
If my camera worked, it would be a little easier to share it, but it's not working, so.
Mine's not either. You just can't see that.
All right, we have some more people hopping on. Hi, Jordana.
Hey, how's it going?
Good, good. How are you?
Glad it's Friday.
That seems to be the sentiment today.
It's felt like a long week.
It has been. I think it has been a long week.
It's been a hard week, yeah.
And the world is still on fire and still a pandemic. So, all right. Well, we can get started. Kelly, do you want to introduce the topic today? And we can,
Dr. Galati, can you call 211?
as people join, we can just keep moving.
Sure. We are talking today about evictions and intake. We have a big potential evictions crisis coming up, and there are lots of ways that we can try and prevent tons of animals from being surrendered. Hassan Auerbach has been researching this in depth and has a whole bunch of strategies that she's been using to prevent this from becoming a crisis at Pima Animal Care Center. So we were hoping we could talk to her about that. I'm not sure if she's quite ready yet.
Yeah, and while she joins us, I mean, it would be good to hear sort of like from people where they are with this crisis. And she's on the phone, but she's trying to get to her computer. She had some car trouble. So, but if people want to...
I'm here, everyone. I would like to hear where people are at with this issue. So I'm going to listen just for the next couple of minutes, and then I'll be...
Awesome. Yeah, so I'll start calling on people if that works, or if people want to just holler what's going on in their communities. Andrea, what's going on with you?
I'd say I can step in here in Atlanta. We haven't seen any major increases in regards to evictions, unfortunately no more than the norm, but we've been pretty successful of recruiting doggy daycares and boarding facilities that have helped temporary house some pets for us. And so far, just in the past couple of weeks, I think we've had about 6 or 7 dogs go into temporary custody with them, and we're working on recruiting volunteers to work with their contacts to try to build this network of places that could be a safety net for them. So far, so good.
And do you have contracts with those places, or are they volunteering their kennel space?
They're volunteering their kennel space. We don't have any formal contract necessarily with them. We do with the owners that we get them to sign for us, but we pretty much kind of just promise, like, hey, we'll definitely give you a shout out on our Facebook page and, social media and things like that. The first one was my personal dog's daycare boarding facility, and they were just happy because they obviously I talk a lot about our work and everything, and they want to give back to the community. And the manager of the boarding facility actually was once homeless with her own dog, so she really resonated with the story and with what we're looking for. So she was happy to jump on board. So yeah, and just kind of going from there.
That's so great. What are other people doing, or what's going on down in Florida?
Erica, you want to go first? Similar to Andrea, we have not seen a huge influx yet. A couple more in the last 2 weeks as far as eviction. What we're noticing is, we're trying to plan a lot of resources for the pet owner to approach us and say, hey, I'm getting evicted. I need help. In reality, what we've seen already in the initial and what we see historically with this is sheriff's office shows up, landlord shows up, the person's already gone. And so how do we proactively find that person that's going to need help in a month or in 2 months, right? And get that information out there. So I think that's really the battle that we're fighting right now, for sure.
Are you putting out any marketing?
And as of right now, no.
Okay.
But it's definitely something that we're looking for
Sure.
Sharon. Yeah.
Are you connecting like with groups in the area or how like that are working with people that are potentially facing eviction or
Absolutely, yes. As part of the HOS program, we've reached out to our local county human services, community services, veteran services, and we're forming. We're forming and storming right now. It's definitely not formulated as of yet, but it's something that we're looking at structuring more specifically for sure.
That's so cool.
All good suggestions. Yeah, thank you.
That's awesome. What about others? Who else do we have on here from shelters? We have someone from PCAS. Where's that? Sarah.
He's at my shelter.
Oh, okay, cool. Erica, what's going on with you all?
Well, we're in North Florida, far away from Spencer. And I don't know if you know the answer to this, Spencer, but I know that, our own governor had a moratorium on evictions for a while, but it was only for those that are impacted directly by COVID, or I should say by job loss, pandemic, however you want to say it. And so there's still been evictions happening. And so now the big debate is the CDC's moratorium on eviction until the end of the year trump the one that we have from the governor and that kind of thing. So I don't think they've totally figured that out, but we haven't seen too much of an increase here. But I definitely agree. Trying to get the information out to the people before they get evicted is key. We don't have a lot of marketing in that area. But even if they can give us a week heads up, I really think that it would make a big difference because we are operating our surrenders by emergency right now. So we do have people that are in transition, moving and that kind of thing, but they're moving out of state. They're moving, far away. So that's why they're giving up their animal. We do have a program that we had in place a little bit that Melissa, who's also on this call, is expanding with our Friends of group, where we have an MOU with a couple of boarding facilities to help people in transition. And right now she's just looking to expand that program so that we can offer more services over a longer period of time, but it covers about 30 days right now.
Thank you for that update. Does anyone else want to share?
Tanel is one of our, what do you call it? Apprentices. How about you guys?
I can just give you a quick update. We just
Sure.
at San Diego Community, we put together an outline and everything, but we've started building, databases and things like that of boarding facilities and just really outlining what our plan looks like, but nothing's really been put in place. I believe we have a state moratorium on evictions until February. I was looking for the exact date. So we haven't started much happening besides just kind of gathering information and making sure we have a plan in place.
Is that a recent change through February in California?
Oh, you're muted.
Sorry, it was just updated just last week that came out. And I'm sorry, you were a little sketchy. My internet's unstable, so I wasn't quite sure what the question was.
No, it's just that I know, Kristen, you had mentioned California on the Monday call. You had mentioned California was getting ready we might have some impending issues, and so that's cool to hear that California's got at least to stay for now. That's good.
Yeah, that just happened.
Hey everybody, I am on camera. I'm Kristen. I think I know most of you. I'm looking through the list of who's on this call. For those of you who I don't know, I run a large municipal.
Hey, Kristen. I don't know if it's just me, but
Order of any county and
hey, Kristen.
yeah.
Your internet is pretty sketchy, I think. Your connection.
Okay.
I
will try to.
Oh, Zoom.
It's been that kind of day, I think.
Yeah.
Like all day for some reason.
See if I think she's probably calling back in. See if she's joining us yet.
If not, I have some more apprentices I can pick on.
Somebody jump in, hurry.
She's probably trying to Oh, Bobby, do you want to share about the resource folder that you just shared in the chat?
Sure, yeah. So I know Andrea shared in the chat as well, but we had this conversation with the tier 1 shelters, and there were a few that already had temporary boarding contracts. So we're trying to consolidate all of those resources in one place. So if your organization has any, that would be wonderful. I'm also from California, so it was exciting to hear about the extension. What the new law ordinance is stating is that if renters can pay at least 25% of whatever their rent is, there will be the eviction memorandum until I think at least January. So I think that's going to help us out quite a bit out on the West Coast. So.
That's great. And the temporary boarding contracts, are there contracts in that folder now?
Yep, there's contracts in the folder. There's for, I think Josh from Sharmac had some that were not only for temporary boarding, but also disaster boarding. So he has a few different kinds. But if there's anything else that any of you can add to that, that would be great. We're trying to get as many resources in one place as possible.
Awesome. That's super cool. Texting Kristen to see if she's having trouble getting back on. Terry, do you have any updates about Fresno while we're waiting?
I think we're probably in the same situation maybe that Spencer is, that, you know, we were reacting for so long. By the time we got there, the SO had gone, the sheriff's office had gone, and we just were sitting there with an empty building and a bunch of animals. But through the tutelage of Haas, we're working on contacting boarding facilities and county programs. Fresno County is incredibly disjointed, and I had the luxury of being under the sheriff's office in my last shelter, so it was just a matter of calling my friend at the civil unit and saying, hey, what's a list of evictions that you're going at, and then we would do it this way. But this truly is a county that nobody really talks to each other, so now it's really grabbing county programs and housing authority and the sheriff's office and all these people that should have been talking probably decades ago. So we're really in sort of the infant stages, but I think at some point, if the goal, like everybody else, is getting resources pages up and running, and just knowing these people and establishing these relationships. So I think, you know, again, infant stages, but we're moving forward slowly.
Excellent.
Can you guys hear me better now?
Yes, very much.
Okay, I think I'm on stable internet now. Sorry about that. Have you guys ever had your side mirror of your car fall off when you run into a trash can? I went through that today.
That's fine.
So yeah, I'm a little, everything's been a little off since then. So sorry about that. Should I continue where I left off?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so I think we have some folks that know quite a lot about this subject. I think Kim might be on this call and a couple of other people, but I just want to say, to introduce it, is that I've really struggled with this one because we don't know a lot about what interventions will work. And we need to be careful not to think about evictions in isolation of the other economic impacts of COVID. And so everybody kind of breathed a sigh of relief when the moratorium was extended. And the moratorium is federal, and it does apply to every state, but it does have some stipulations. And one of them, of course, being that we're in a way kicking the can down the road, and people are going to have to pay back this money or face eviction at some point. I mean, the system, it questionably can or won't hold. And so we're going to face the economic impacts one way or another. And so right now, I think we're seeing those primarily through food insecurity, through people actually selectively abandoning their property. And then, as many of you pointed out, the moratoriums are really only related to COVID, and they have some stipulations, including the federal one. It's good to know the fine print. And I believe, and I think Kim, if she's on this call, can back this up, I believe there's really questionable evidence that things like providing boarding past 30 days is going to be effective. We are doing it, but we're not sure what the impact's going to be, if any. We've struggled in the past that people who do find themselves in this situation have trouble finding pet accessible housing. And so we may hold an animal for a couple of months and not get it back. So it is a little bit pie in the sky to think that we can have a gigantic impact and that everyone getting evicted can keep their animal. But I think it's like we still have to try a bunch of different things. We have very little data to tell us what will work, but we can use that data to give us some direction and then track what works. So it may be that early intervention. Spencer's point is, I think Spencer's the one who mentioned early intervention, and that becomes a really important strategy. How early can you get to eviction fairs? And I think what we've done is we pretend at our organization that we are someone facing eviction, and so we're walking ourselves through the system itself. So I think today's conversation, what I hope we can do is talk a little bit about ideas that have worked on a limited basis, and then think about how can we frame this outside of just talking about evictions, because that's not going to capture the whole picture of what we're trying to do. And living precariously is a little bit different than immediately facing an eviction. And the last thing I'll add is that we know we are already seeing an entire new group of people that we're serving that are not typically among our most vulnerable residents. New York Times had an article today called something about minivans and food banks. And it was featuring families who are driving their minivans around to different food distribution events, and that this has become a new reality for a lot of people that have never faced this before. And the bigger picture about that is that people may be in housing, but with the $600 relief payments ending, even if they're in housing, it doesn't mean that they can afford food, basic supplies, necessities, cell phone bills, electric bills. So these things are all real issues now. All of these things lead to people surrendering their pets. So I guess having said all that, I want to turn it back over to you guys. Where do you think we have the best chance of actually making a difference to intake itself?
I think you're right on the money, Kristen, in that I don't know that just eviction is the concern here. I think we're looking at a lot of people being more mobile with their work, moving to different areas, and pet-friendly housing when people need to downsize, when people need to move for economic opportunity, is going to be more poignant. So I think we do have an opportunity in that it's maybe not as much of a landlord's market if they're having a lot of property sitting empty, that maybe we can attack some of these larger housing groups to ask for pet-friendly housing at this point so that they can fill up their properties with more stable renters.
So I think what I hear you saying is that this is a chance to, when the market's saturated, when the housing market's saturated, we have very little bargaining room I've started talking about pet accessible housing rather than pet friendly housing, because it really is an accessibility issue, but we have less bargaining power, and that at this moment, if we see evictions happening, it may give us an opportunity to advocate for pet accessible housing for some of those other evicted folks who may be able to move into that housing. Is that right? So if we take the proactive strategies, which aim to get to people prior to the moment when they are forced to leave their home, the proactive strategies include everything from food support to medical support to eviction prevention resources. Do you think that we are more likely to be like that's casting a wide net, right? You've got to go out and hit a lot of people. Whereas the reactive services mean that you're only touching the people that are coming to you. What strategy do you feel like in your organization you're most focused on right now, and why?
I think for us, Kristen, as far as intake prevention, intake diversion, the focus has to be proactive, because for us, a lot of that reactive, there's no option other than you're taking the animal. I mean, when the sheriff's office calls, we're taking that dog. They're not taking it. Deputy Johnson's not taking it home. We are. So I think for us, the focus has got to be the proactive approach, even like you said, if that means casting the wide net, right?
I also don't think it's feasible for shelters to have the time and like the expertise to be developing partnerships with every single service provider that in any way, shape, or form touches on this. So I think, it's about finding the connections that you're going to be able to serve the most number of people or the most vulnerable populations and focusing there, because you can always build up from there. But I just worry that if we're telling shelters, these are all the agencies that you need to be working with, that's like really overwhelming for people. And I just worry about the burnout on top of everything that they're already dealing with.
So which services would you recommend people reach out to if they were going to prioritize?
I think starting with your, continuum of care, can never say that word, for the homeless shelter system, because their whole structure is set up to have, they have a centralized intake process. They're required to from the federal level, and they're streamlining people that are at risk of becoming evicted or losing just losing their homes in general, versus people that are already have lost their homes. They also have methods for screening and kind of triaging people based on their needs. So the more that we can be in front of those systems, they're interacting with a large swath of the population already, and they have the expertise to know how to navigate that system. We just need to know, we want to make sure that pets are on their radar too, because the other problem with this is that those systems aren't asking about pets in their intake. So they don't even find out, it's so common for them to go through a long process of getting somebody into supportive housing or getting somebody into, rapid rehousing, and then they find out they have a pet and so they can't go. So the more that we can all be identifying these things from the start and formalize, like we all need to be advocating for them, whoever these, service providers in your area, make sure they're asking clients, do you have a pet at that point of central intake? Because the earlier we can find out about that, the more options we're going to have and the better the outcome is.
I'm going to pop in here real quick. And just in my brief research in the Fresno County looking for these resources, Kim nailed it. I mean, I'm just looking as just Terry looking up on the internet, and all of these resources, none of them say pets. I mean, they're everything. I mean, I'm going down these lists of faith-based services and housing authority and everything. And I cannot believe that in all of these resources, not one of them said there was no link to anything related to pets. And we know that the enormous amount of percentage of these people have pets. And it was like, I cannot, and I don't know if that's Fresno specific, but I mean, Kim's knocking it out. And but I was shocked, and I didn't think that was the case. I thought for sure somebody had thought of that, but you nailed it, Kim.
I've had to learn this the hard way, having done this for a long time.
Yeah.
And this is one of the things that they're making progress in New York City on is, okay, like how, one of the things that some of the, you know, animal welfare social workers there are working on is getting in front of the homeless coalition. I'm blanking on the names, but basically like up until now, the process has been like, you call us when there's a crisis and we're at like the last hour, and unfortunately we can't do anything. So how can we be changing your structure, your intake structure, so that there is a question on there that says, do you have a pet? So, you know, we're always going to be in crisis mode, but at least if we could even find out another week earlier, that's going to buy us more time. So we have to get these questions on intake. I mean, just generally speaking, like with social work agencies and of social workers, the last research showed that only 1/3 of social workers across the country are asking questions to ask their clients, do you have a pet, when they're doing their initial intake. So that means 2/3 of the time we're missing that opportunity. These are the structural procedural changes that I think are really crucial. Otherwise, we're always going to be reacting at the last hour. And like Spencer said, I mean, our options are often limited or non-existent once we reach that point.
Hey, this is Sarah at Pasco. I just wanted to really quick, number one, commend Kim because I completely agree with everything you're saying. And number two, I think that it's two-way communication. And from my end, that's what we see a lot is a great example is, you know, I was recently out with an animal control officer and we were talking to a lady and she was showing us the food that she received from Meals on Wheels. And they also were giving her pet food. Well, we have a pet food bank at our shelter. And unbeknownst, you know, I had no idea that Meals on Wheels was also providing that when they have those donations. And just that bridge of that gap. I was also part of, for our counties, our CARES program where we were providing assistance for rent and mortgage and utilities. And just in speaking with some of these people, you know, oftentimes they would say, oh, I'm so sorry, you know, if you hear my pet in the background, if you hear them barking or things like that, oh my gosh. And so we have a lot of those tools to get out ahead of it because we have these people that are filing for unemployment, are requesting the CARES Act assistance. And, you know, a lot of those programs, to Kim's point, are not set up to also ask, where are you at with food insecurity in regards to your pets? And do you have pets? And I think that it's, especially at the county level, we do offer so many different programs. You know, our homeless coalition here in Pasco does a survey every 3 years where they go out and meet with these folks. And it's just incredible to hear that they talk about, and until that homeless person winds up at one of our county parks, and a park ranger that we have contact with will contact us and say, hey, this animal needs vaccines or it needs something. You know, we don't get that information. And I think it's outward communication to getting these other entities and what they're doing and making sure they're aware of our services. But it's also, to Kim's point, the second communication internally to our team, our shelter, our ACOs who are out talking to these people 9 times out of 10. They can tell you what's going on in the community. And we really need to tap into our ACOs because they have such a good pulse on what's happening, but it's really talking to them and making sure they're understanding of what their limit is, what is their capacity, what is their scope. Right now, our current inventory of animals is incredibly low, but that doesn't mean that the workload is low, right? And so making sure that they're not burned out and that we're not overreaching by going to these entities and not also filling up back on the end side with our shelter team to educate them as to what's going on. We have a meeting coming up with our staff where we're actually going to talk about some of these things that we're going to do because so often we hear, I didn't know about that. I didn't know we were doing that. When did that start? Or how is that happening? And I think that it's really a challenge to make sure that, yes, outwardly we're communicating, but the internal piece is so critical.
I have a question, a follow-up question for you, Kim. And thanks for being here and sharing your knowledge with us. I'm curious, when you were saying that shelters may not have the bandwidth, but then that social workers should be asking these questions. Is there like sort of a good suggestion that you might have for even just like a template email or something that we could be sending out to service providers in our communities, just like letting them know what we provide and asking them to ask if people have pets, and sort of like, I don't know, you know what I mean? I'm just trying to think of like ways that we could streamline this potentially.
Yeah, I think that's a great question, and I'm really glad you asked. And I think, to be honest with you, this is something that is going to work best when it comes from somebody within that industry. You know, like, we have to remember that these social service agencies are extremely underfunded, overworked, like the turnover is always high. So this is something like in my work that I've been pushing for change at the national level and at the state level. And, you know, so every community that I've been working in, I'm going straight to the top and saying, this is a question that we need to get on your intake assessment, but you have to know the language to use, you know? So I think this is somebody that, like, I would love to be talking with Haas about how we can be truly integrating with these human service agencies and doing it from within, from people that work in them already and can kind of bridge that gap, because I don't think you're going to get a great response if you're just sending an email saying, can you do this in addition to what you're already having to do? That's not going to really go over well. But I have a ton of thoughts on it and would love to, you know, I don't want to take up all the time here.
No, I mean, that's kind of, this forum is sort of for us to all like wrap and just kind of chat. So
yeah.
Do you guys think that, I guess one of the questions I have for the group is, the eviction toolkit came out from HSUS and it is really helpful, but to Kim's point, it gives you a lot of recommendations for partnerships and things you should do that would be terribly overwhelming for a lot of shelters. I mean, ours included, even though we have people dedicated to this kind of thing. It's a great resource, but we are hiring a Keeping Families Together project manager and program manager, and they're going to be trying to really get things that are usable for shelters, like that you can take as a leader or as a manager or coordinator, and you can give to your frontline staff and they can help implement it. Do you have thoughts about what would be helpful? Because this person is going to be dedicated to this full time for 6 months. So what would be, if you could wave your magic wand and have them do something that would be really useful for you, what would that look like?
You know, hey everybody, I was just thinking, what if we're just totally coming at this from the wrong direction? And what if we should be doing is asking those social services organizations, what has worked in the past? What have you found is successful in getting people into homes or getting them stable environments, getting them back on their feet? And we try and work off of what's already historically been working, instead of trying to just throw everything and be like, I don't know, let's try all the things. So maybe this position, or a person similar to this could be contacting these agencies and finding out, like, what is your most successful tactic? What tools or resources do you have that are the most beneficial or seem to work?
I agree with that. And I think that's so critical, because we keep looking within our own animal welfare bubble for the solutions, but the solutions are outside of our field, you know? And like, this is why I have like identity crisis, because half of my career is in animal welfare, but the other half is working in these other systems. And I'm like, wait, we need to be talking, they need to be coordinating. So yeah, there's tons of lessons that we can learn from other industries. Like, I just did a presentation on what lessons can animal welfare organizations learn from the homeless shelter services continuum of care and other systems. Like, what works in these cases, what has not worked, what are they moving away from? And I just think there's a huge need for that. And I just don't see any one person being able to collectively gather all of this knowledge. So like, let's tap into the reports and the knowledges that are already out there. And I mean, I'm happy to share all the work I've done, but again, I don't want to hog the time.
Well, Rory,
Oh.
isn't that what the working groups are for? I mean, I sit in on a lot of working groups and I hear from a lot of people from outside of animal welfare who are offering us their resources. And I know social work in particular is going to be a big deal. So,
Yeah, it is. It is absolutely what the working groups are tasked with. But I don't know that they can do it all, you know, so.
yeah, but we're assessing what the working groups can do, and that's guiding us in our staffing plan.
Do you all think that, I mean, when I think about what I need very usable, translatable tools for my staff. So I need policies, procedures, recommendations. So for instance, we're working on right now creating a vulnerability index modeled off of human social services for homeless shelter intake, for animal intake. So having somebody help me do something like that would be really, really helpful. And that's kind of what I'm wondering is, do you need just sort of a concrete toolkit where all the forms, where the sample boarding contracts are, where all of that stuff lives in one place, and then access to, like Kim's saying, all the information and research she's done, where you can access readings and articles on sort of the best practices in human social work and other fields? What do you feel like? Do you feel like that would be useful?
To be honest, having worked in both settings, I'm not sure that it is. I mean, because part of me is like, you know, we can put together SOPs and this, that, and the other, but if we're not pausing to ask ourselves the question, like, why are we doing this? What is our role in this? And how can we truly integrate? And like, that takes time. It's not something as simple as like, just here's an SOP, go forth and do it. If people aren't bought into the why we're doing this, it's going to be harder for us to get to the how.
I guess hearing from some of the other directors might be helpful, because I know that we feel a real sense of urgency around this. And I feel like we have a lot of great ideas. We don't have the concrete materials to get stuff done. So if you are if you're a manager, a director, a leader of a shelter, understanding that we do need to understand why, what do you need in terms of materials?
I think for us, it's been a process just getting resource people in place. You know, initially when we were looking at these work groups, we were going, okay, well, our front desk personnel will just beef those up and we'll train them. And then it became down to, they can't possibly know every single resource in every single area, whether it's coming from an animal control issue or it's coming from a housing issue. So we're just in the process of putting together, you know, just a Google form that anybody who's answering the phone could submit, and it goes straight to a spreadsheet. And then the people that are in charge of just providing resources can start going through that. But again, trying to compile all those resources as well. I mean, most of it is just a mass organization effort, just to get everybody, just to get a few people that are doing the resources on the same page. And that takes a lot of time, a lot of technology know-how, quite frankly.
Yeah. That's really cool, Erica, that you have all of that set up right now.
Well, we're in the process of it, but I'll tell you, Dara at Pensacola Humane put this whole Google Doc together. She did a presentation on it through a Breast Friends local group, and it was stupendous. We took so much away from it. Just little things like when the resource people call the people back for resources, they continue to talk about their animal by its name, so that they continue to enforce the bond that the people have with the animal. Because when they're going through these emotional times, sometimes they've sort of either already made up the mind that they're splitting, or they start to depart emotionally. So little things like that will go a long way. And it was a really awesome presentation. I'll put the link in the chat.
Fantastic.
Yeah, it's really cool. It was a good one.
I think for Fresno, I mean, personally, I could probably use a little bit more tutelage from maybe somebody like Kim, where she just kind of gives me some ideas about who actually to contact. I mean, I'm, you know, of average intelligence, and I can probably figure out the most of the main organizations, but I mean, the intricacies of some of these resources is, you know, completely foreign to me. And I think just maybe a little bit of a roadmap of, and obviously not all county programs are going to be exactly the same, but maybe just a little bit of a roadmap to say, these are typically the resources in that typical counties offer, or typical counties of these particular demographics, or some just a little bit of a roadmap, because I can sort of parcel out some of those phone calls and some of those contacts, because I have better contacts in some areas. Like maybe I have better contacts in the sheriff's office than I do at the housing authority, but just maybe just a little bit of a roadmap to navigate some of those basic contacts.
And Kristen and Sarah have done a lot of that too, with a lot of success over the last couple of years in HEMA. And it seems like people are always, like service agencies, at least in Tucson, have been really open when you all have approached them. So how have you approached them?
Well, we've had Bennett, who came out of Pets for Life, really dedicated to building those partnerships and going and meeting with people. And Kim's point's really well taken, that it was we had to invest in learning and understanding how the agencies all fit together in the community, and how we could have a seat at the table for all these community conversations. So we had to actually assign a staff person to that, and one with a lot of experience in this area. The other thing I think that we did that was something I would encourage others to do is we created a Keeping Families Together specialist that is actually in the intake lobby. I'm not so sure that the widespread cast the net outreach is sustainable. I worry that, like when we do food outreach, or we're doing these offering boarding vouchers ahead of time, we're quickly running out of all of our resources. But the Keeping Families Together specialist ended up probably being the best investment we've ever made. So they stand in the lobby and they literally just greet people when they walk in the door, and they welcome them and they make them feel like they're not in the saddest place in the world. And then they just sit down and have a lengthy conversation with them about what we can do to help. And we never start from offering solutions. We just hear people's stories. So we don't start out saying, da, 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 can we give you this and this? We just hear people's stories, and then we try to piece together resources for them. And it doesn't work all the time. I mean, last year, we kept 3,000 animals in their homes with these services. We took in another 19,000. So it's not a magic bullet, but it really does help anyone that our goal, like in short, is if someone has a will to keep their animal, we will work to find a way. And it's just that simple. And we can't always find a way, but we'll at least try.
Not to change the subject, it's sort of related, but you were telling us that you got approval to pay people stipends for holding people's pets for boarding. Can you tell us a little about that? I'm very curious to know.
Yeah, so we had about $20,000 in grant money to dedicate to boarding, and we are using so much of that. We went through last year $15,000, and that was before COVID, of boarding money. It's about $20 to $25 a day to board an animal with one of our partners. And so Michelle, who's overseeing our HOS programs, came up with we've been trying to do subsidized boarding for subsidized fostering for years. The catch has always been that if you pay people to foster, you actually incentivize them to not get the animal adopted. And so we've never really figured it out. But in this case, what we're going to be piloting is boarding the owned pets in foster homes and paying the fosters $10 a day. So roughly $300 a month to house an owned animal. And we will selectively connect the foster with the owner and provide up to 30 days of boarding that way. And the reason we're doing that is actually resources. We can board twice as many animals by boarding them that way as we can if we keep them in the kennel. And of course, just as importantly, we can give them a more humane, positive experience while they're being cared for. We don't know if it's going to work. We're going to try it and pilot it with under 20 animals a month and see if it is successful. But we have a lot to learn, so we'll be tracking the data and hope for the best.
Kristen, I have a quick question about that. I was talking to a friend of mine who is the executive director of ECHO here in Austin, and she was asking specifically about that program and wondering if you would be or thought about being targeting people who are low income or who are needing the money for that kind of thing, if that would be ever part of this. I thought it was kind of a cool concept, though I know it probably have some issues too, but made me wonder.
Well, there's 3 ways you can enter the program, either through an agency, a social services agency partner, an emergency veterinarian, or a veterinarian that wants to help, or through calling the Pet Support Center. So virtually everyone that is using the program is in need. We don't do income verification, but largely we're dealing with people that can't afford private boarding. So we're doing that anyway, and we're working with our social service agency partners. We've had a really hard time getting social service agencies to call us. I think socializing them, and this goes back to Kim's point, it takes work and effort to really like build those partnerships and to teach your community that you're here. And I think it's been true in our experience that they aren't asking people if they own pets. And when we started to go to these meetings, these human services meetings, a lot of the caseworkers hadn't even thought about animals. Like it wasn't even like within the realm of their thinking, because they're trying to place people with their kids, and they sort of saw it as a secondary issue. But I think we've made a lot of inroads now. A lot of our partners are asking, and they are seeing animals as just as primary of an issue. But you've got to explain to them that pets are family for a lot of people. And I think that I thought they would already know that, and a lot of folks just didn't.
The other piece of that too is there's some really fantastic research out there that shows that when social workers, doctors, nurses, when they ask their clients or patients just basic questions about their pets, they end up gathering a lot more clinically relevant information about the patient or the client themselves, that they need to do their job better. So it's not that we need to convince these practitioners that pets are part of the family per se. I mean, we'll reach some people with that, but what I always lead with is, if you acknowledge that the pet is important in this person's life, this will help you build rapport faster and get the information that you really need to better understand what is going on in your own client's life. And that, leading with that, has been far more effective and is supported by the research as well. But so it's kind of like we need to, the traditional talking points that we tend to lead with in animal welfare may not actually be the most effective ones in these other scenarios. So like what I like to do is arm people with like, here's the research, here's the talking points, and this is how you can get them on board, you know, like real fast.
What research are you citing?
What specific papers? Or I mean,
yeah,
I can dig it up. I have a whole poster and presentation I've done about it, but it's just research from various, you know, fields that shows, you know, like, you know, for example, if you're working with an older adult that lives at home, and you want to make, your goal is to make sure that that person is safe, has what they need, and is not falling, and you want to help them age in place, their biggest concern is letting on that they're having a problem, because they don't want to end up in a nursing home. So they're not necessarily going to tell you everything that they're struggling with, because they're afraid of what you're going to do. But when you start asking questions about the pet, and does your pet like going for walks, then someone might start telling you, well, we used to, but it's, you know, I'm in a lot of pain right now, so I'm not able to walk. That's a different answer than before, when they're like, everything's fine, we're good, you know? So when you can help practitioners understand this, and when I share the research that supports this, that resonates with them.
Kim, I have a question. So I know as an industry, as an animal welfare industry, we're really advocating on bridging the gap between what we do in social services. Is there any sort of ambassador industry from the social service sector that is really advocating for bridging the gap with animal welfare the same way that we are?
Yes, there's the veterinary social work group, and actually their conference is coming up in October, and I'm one of the presenters. There's also, different professionals within the NASW, National Association of Social Workers, that focus on this topic, and I'm happy to connect you because I'm part of that group as well. And then there's different, state and local chapters of NASW that are focusing on this. But I do think that this is really like an area where I think it's most effective to be talking peer to peer. And I know that there are more and more social work professionals working in animal welfare. And I think those are the ones that are going to be really effective in bridging that gap. Just like, I'm not going to be great at bridging the gap with veterinarians because I'm not a veterinarian, but I am a social worker. And so like I can speak that language, but there's a growing number of them. There's even a book that's been published on human animal bond considerations for social workers. So it's a great time for us to be entering this conversation because there is interest in that.
And I think from our end, right, we can all like think of top 10 reasons why it's beneficial for animal welfare to bridge this gap. Is there any sort of list out there that talks about like the top 10 or 20 reasons for social services, like the benefits of increasing this bridge or bridging this gap?
Yeah, I mean, there's a growing body of evidence about that. And it kind of takes, again, it takes two angles. There's the body of evidence that shows what are the benefits to people of having a pet. And that's kind of like where HABRI comes in and all their research. But then there's also the other body that I focus on, which is how can this help you do your job better? How can you serve your human client better by bringing the pet into the framework? So I just posted an example to a poster presentation I did that's specifically geared towards social workers that work with older adults. And this is an example of what I'm talking about, how like we want to speak their language and help them understand. We're not asking you to in addition to being a social worker for the person, now you got to be a social worker for the pet too. Like that's not, they don't have time. But when you frame it in terms of like how this is going to help you do your job, for example, like asking about the pet, we want to know if they say yes, like let's start talking about an emergency plan in case you get hospitalized right now, rather than waiting till the point where somebody's in the emergency room and they won't be admitted until they know someone's going to take care of their pets. So speaking the language, I think, is key.
Yeah,
I'm going to piggyback on what Kim's saying real quick. I'm doing a lot of research into like domestic violence issues right now. And Katie Campbell from Red Rover talks a lot. She's got a ton of research about how pets are supporting their owners getting through that kind of transition. And I would almost guarantee that it's similar. It's different, right? I mean, escaping a domestic violence situation is not being evicted, but sort of like the emotional support, the resources, the things that you need to process and move through, those things are similar. And so it might be worth trying to pull some of that data too into this conversation.
Yeah. And it kind of speaks to the why. Like we're going to get to the how, but first we got to capture the why, and like one of the big issues in human medicine and human, well-being is like trauma and how damaging traumatic experiences can be to a person's physical and mental health. So, as we're talking about, for example, like we want more pet friendly or pet accessible housing, let's start framing this from the perspective that having to get rid of a family pet is a traumatic experience, and especially for children, that can have lasting damaging effects. So that's a framework that they're going to resonate with. So that's the kind of stuff that we can, like, I try to lead with that stuff. I think that's a great point, Sarah.
Yeah, it really just makes me think when, being, like you said, so many people in so many different industries are so overworked and so overwhelmed. If, as far as a strategy or some sort of, deliverable we can provide to shelters, if there's some sort of very simple research, top 10 or 20 list of why social services believes there should be a stronger connection with animal services, and then the email that we're sending to our local agencies is subject, hey, we want to help. And then that is, hey, we heard from people in your industry that this would be very beneficial for you. check out this top 10 list. How can we develop this relationship to support you? Because our industry wants to help people just like you help people. And I think that bridge is really the relationships and why people love to do what they do. I mean, many of us are in this industry because we love animals. A lot of people are in that industry because they want to help people. So I think if they feel like our objective is the same as theirs versus just wanting to do that because it's going to ultimately benefit the animals, I think we're going to build a lot better sustainable relationships.
Well, I think we're about out of time. Any parting thoughts? Kristen, Kim, Kelly, anybody?
I don't have any.
I hope that this has been helpful. It's definitely been getting my brain moving. And I feel like we just have so many conversations that we need to have about this. So I'm gonna try to follow up with getting us some more resources and connecting with you, Kim, about some things. But that link, I don't know if it was just not working for me. Oh, you said you emailed it to me. Thank you. Dr. Blackwell is also a great, yeah, he's awesome. Sorry, I'm just catching up on these comments. Anyway, this has been awesome. I've really enjoyed this. I think that Kelly, will you remind me the schedule is through September, and then we were thinking about switching this to Wednesdays starting in October.
Yeah, I think the 30th is the first Wednesday.
September 30th.
Mm-hmm. But
Okay,
we have all
great.
the Fridays booked.
Okay, awesome. So I hope that everyone can keep joining on Wednesday. I think we changed it to Wednesday because it seemed like on Friday it's sometimes a little bit challenging for people to come. But if there's a need for both, we can always do that. So just let us know if Wednesdays are not good for you, and we can always offer additional support on Fridays as well. But we just had received some feedback that during the week might be better than the end of the week for these conversations. But it's been great seeing you all. This is always like a highlight of my week, and I'll have my camera next week so that I can actually have a face that moves. And thanks to everybody for being here. Thanks, Kim and Kristen and Kelly and all the rest of you. And I hope you have a wonderful holiday weekend.
You guys too. Thank you.
Bye.